Okay, then let's
Later to
start
start.
then. Yeah. So
I think yeah, global table is where we left. So that was yeah going on. I think.
yeah, correct. So actually, Kaushik stayed for a while after that call
Right.
ended. So at that time we discussed. So we successfully tested it. So it was fine. So we created some items in Asia Pacific Mumbai, and then we navigated to Singapore replica table, and then we could see that the same item is there also. And then we created one item in Singapore table, and then we could see that it got created automatically even in Mumbai. So it's pretty straightforward. So just try it yourself, and if at all there are any issues, we can connect then. So did you get a
Sure, sure.
chance to try it out? No.
Yeah, I'm halfway that yesterday's video. So yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Let's discuss today's agenda. So today we'll discuss what VPC endpoints are, and then we'll see what security token service is. There is a service called as AWS STS. So using AWS STS, we can request temporary credentials, and those temporary credentials are valid only for a specific duration. And once that duration is over, then we have to again request for another temporary credentials. So it's a good way of automatically rotating the credentials, because if we generate access key ID and secret access key and then we keep using it, then it may happen that somehow it may get compromised. So it's a good way of rotating your credentials, and there are other use cases also. So we'll discuss where we can use AWS STS, and then we'll see there is another service called as AWS organizations. So this service lets you manage multiple AWS accounts, and there will have something like AWS management account, and then there will be a lot of member accounts. And in what cases this service might be useful, we will discuss all those use cases. And then lastly, we'll discuss Elastic Beanstalk. So we have, initially in the first lecture, we discussed what Elastic Beanstalk is, that it's a platform as a service, and it's primarily, focused towards developers. So a person for example, a person is Node.js developer, so all he knows is how to write Node.js applications, but he doesn't have any infrastructure knowledge. He doesn't know how to create VPCs. He doesn't know what CIDR block is or how to subnet it. He doesn't know what firewalls is, what ports to allow. He doesn't have any of that knowledge. So he doesn't need to know that. So if he wants to quickly deploy his web application, then he can use Elastic Beanstalk. He just has to do a couple of clicks and the environment is ready, and then he can easily upload his zip file, and then the code will be deployed. So we'll see that in action and it will become clear. So let's start with VPC
So,
endpoints.
Shubham, we can say Elastic Beanstalk are like EC2 instances with already installed libraries, right? Something like that.
Yeah, actually, Elastic Beanstalk. See, when we go to Elastic Beanstalk, it is going to ask you a couple of questions. That what is the runtime, or what is the platform on which this web application is written. It is mainly for web applications. So it is going to ask you, is it a PHP based application, or is it a Node.js, or is it a .NET application? So it will ask you what is the runtime, and then the developer has to specify that. And behind the scenes, what Elastic Beanstalk does is it will also tell you that this runtime environment is on Amazon Linux too. So basically what it does is it launches an EC2 instance, it assigns the right security group, and it does a bunch of other things. And then it is happening behind the scenes. The developer doesn't know that Elastic Beanstalk behind the scenes is spinning up an EC2 instance. It is installing maybe those runtime environment. So you might have seen when we were doing it ourselves, like when we deployed that Hire Me app. At that time, what we did was we did couple of configuration like yum install HTTPD, we installed web server, then we installed PHP runtime environment and whatnot. So all these things, Elastic Beanstalk takes care of it automatically. Developer doesn't see that, so it happens behind the scenes. But if he navigates to this EC2 section, he will be able to see that EC2 instance, and basically the developer or the company who is using Elastic Beanstalk, they have the control over the resources that Elastic Beanstalk is provisioning. So they can also manually modify it. So if at all they want to, change the security group, or for some reason they want to log in to the EC2 instance itself, they can do it. It's just that it's not necessary. But if at all for some reason, if somebody wants to log into that EC2 instance which Elastic Beanstalk is managing, they can do it. So they have that access. Okay.
Right. So, the difference between Lambda and Beanstalk is we have the access to the EC2 instance for Beanstalk, right? Whereas Lambda service is serverless, wherein we don't have any access to the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's true. But other thing is that we can't just deploy a whole web application onto a Lambda function. If it is possible to create serverless applications, but the architecture would be a bit different. So how you architect a web application on a Lambda function, that would be, I mean, from the development point of view, it would be very different than the normal. So basically, Elastic Beanstalk lets you deploy any web application that you normally deploy it or run it yourself on maybe on premise or even on EC2 instance. Just it takes over the administrative task. You don't have to worry about that. But essentially, I mean, if for example I have some PHP based web application, as think it this way. For example, I can deploy a WordPress application on an EC2 instance, but can I install WordPress on a Lambda function? No, right? So the same goes here as well. So WordPress is just one application which is built on PHP. So similarly, you can also develop your own PHP web application. So that web application can't be simply put in a Lambda function. Lambda function also supports, you know, it can support some code execution, but typically it is some smaller piece of code, and you may have to, create several Lambda functions that may work, in conjunction. And see, the architecture would be very different from the normal uh, traditional web applications.
Okay.
So but it is true at a high level, it is true that Lambda does not give us access to the underlying operating system, wherein Elastic Beanstalk gives us access to the underlying operating system. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll see that it will become more clear when we do hands-on. So that's the last topic for today's session. So let's start with VPC endpoints first. Okay. So what is a VPC endpoint? A VPC endpoint enables you to privately connect your VPC to supported AWS services without requiring an internet gateway, NAT gateway, or egress only gateway. Instances in your VPC do not require public IP addresses to communicate with resources in the service. Traffic between your VPC and other service does not leave the Amazon network. So what does it mean? Uh, okay, tell me one thing. If let me show you, I have already launched two instances. Okay, so I have Bastion host. This is in public subnet. Okay, and then I have DB server in private subnet, and we do not have NAT gateway as of now. So essentially, this private subnet does not have any kind of internet connectivity. So essentially, any EC2 instance which is launched inside this private subnet will not have any kind of internet connectivity at all. So if I try to connect to this Bastion host, so I can connect to it because it's in public subnet. So let me do it. So I think, okay. So Yeah, I'm already inside this Bastion host, okay? And in both these EC2 instances, I have attached an IAM role, okay? We can also see it. It's quite easy to do it. While launching it, you can specify that IAM role, or even you can change it later on also, that once the EC2 instance is up and running, you can change the IAM role, or you can assign an IAM role if you missed specifying while you were creating an EC2 instance. So I can show you here that, okay, so here you can see this is the IAM role attached with this host, okay, and this IAM role lets this EC2 instance interact with S3 service. So basically in this IAM role I have attached IAM policy, which IAM policy basically which grants full access to S3 service, okay. So same goes with this DB server, okay. Even with DB server I have attached the same IAM role, okay. So now I am inside this Bastion host. Okay. So what do you think will happen if I do AWS S3 LS? So what will happen? Will this command be successful or it will give me an error?
Yeah, it should be successful because we have
Should be
provided that
successful. Yeah,
Yeah,
because you're
from
given that
public.
time role.
yeah, the role.
Yes, it should be successful. Correct. It will get successful. We'll see that. And why it will get successful? Because of two reasons. One is one is that it has the correct IAM role assigned. And the other reason is that it is in a public subnet with a public IP address. Okay. So that is why we will get the output of this command. If I do AWS S3 LS, so I will see the list of buckets in my account. And if I try to connect to maybe this DB server, which is in private subnet, and as of now there is no NAT gateway in place, so essentially it is in complete isolation. And any EC2 instance in this private subnet will have no internet connectivity. So let's try to connect to this DB server from this Bastion host. Okay, so I have already uploaded the private key here, and then what I will do is SSH-I. I will specify the private key and then we'll connect to this DB server. I am inside this DB server. Now, what do you think if I do the same, if I execute the same command here? Will it get
Should,
successful or not?
I think it should work because it has the same IAM role, right?
Yeah, it has the same IAM role,
But
but
it
it
is
does not
But
have
private.
internet
Yeah,
connectivity, right?
public,
correct.
yeah,
There is no
public
NAT
IP. Yeah.
gateway, as you said.
So yes, so essentially for any command to work, for any AWS CLI commands to work, or even if, for example, I am for example, I have deployed a web application on any EC2 instance, and that web application is basically using AWS SDK to interact with a lot of AWS services. So assume I have some EC2 instances on which I have deployed my custom web application that I have deployed in-house, that I have developed in-house, and that application I have deployed on an EC2 instance. For some reason, that is inside a private subnet, and that web application using AWS SDK, it is making call to different AWS services. So even so, no matter no matter how you're calling AWS services, eventually these basically what I'm trying to say is that we already know that there are three ways of interacting with AWS, right? One is through AWS Management Console, through AWS CLI, and through AWS SDKs. So no matter using which mode you are interacting with AWS services, essentially we are making API calls to different AWS services, and and each AWS service has an API endpoint. Okay, so every so be it any API, not just in case of AWS. So every RESTful API will have some HTTP or HTTPS endpoint. Okay, so normally the code or the API client will make a HTTP call to that endpoint. Okay, so here we do not see that because AWS does a lot of heavy lifting so that we don't have to see the low level implementation of that. But essentially whenever either we make AWS CLI commands then what is happening behind the scenes is this AWS CLI tool is making API calls to respective AWS services. Okay, and all those service endpoints. Okay, all those service endpoints will have a endpoint, and it will also have a public IP address. Okay, let me show you what I mean. For example, if I when I make a when I execute maybe any S3 command, okay, whenever I execute any AWS CLI command with respect to S3, then what happens is an API call is made to this endpoint. Okay, so and if I can show you, so S3 dot ap south1 dot amazon aws.com. Okay, so we can see that, see, this is the API endpoint for AWS S3 service for Asia Pacific Mumbai. Okay, so uh, similarly, if I want, so similarly for other regions, there will be a separate endpoint. Okay, so if I want to see for North Virginia, what is the region code for North Virginia? I believe it's US East 1. Okay, so here we can see this is the public IP address for this is the API endpoint for S3 in North Virginia. Okay, so we can see all these API endpoints resolve to a public IP address. Okay, similarly for other AWS services also, there are API endpoints. We have not observed this so far because we do not make API calls directly. So either we use AWS SDK or we use AWS CLI tool because it simplifies.
Hello.
Simplifies a lot of yes, Rahim.
Shubham, we lost
Oh, I
your
think
Yes.
voice.
my
Yes. Yes.
okay. Let me repeat it. So essentially, every AWS service will have an API endpoint. Okay, and so just like for in case of S3, this is the API endpoint. Okay, and so basically, even the API endpoint would differ from region to region. Okay, so normally the API and the format is something like this. Okay, the service name dot dot region code dot amazon aws.com. Okay, so in case of if it is S3, then S3 dot, if we are talking about S3 in Asia Pacific Mumbai, then the region code is this, right? amazon aws.com. So we can see here connection timed out on endpoint URL this. Okay, so uh, and if for example I can also show you for EC2. So ns lookup ec2 dot ap south 1 dot amazon aws.com. So we can see even this API endpoint has a has this IP address, and all these API endpoints are publicly accessible, and all these API endpoints resolve to a public IP address. Okay, so so that is why when we try to execute CLI commands from an EC2 instance which is in a private subnet with no internet connectivity, it will not work because it will not be able to connect to the IP addresses behind the API endpoints. Okay, so now how can we resolve it? So the solution is simple, that we can create an NAT gateway, and then basically we can add a route, and we can say that any internet traffic should be directed to the NAT gateway, and then it would start working because when we execute this AWS CLI commands, then our machine will be able to connect to these API endpoints which has a public IP address. Okay. So now what if, for example, maybe this is a DB server, okay, and you first take database backups on a local file system, okay, and then you have some script that you have written to upload those backups to an S3 bucket, and you run that script as a cron job. Okay, maybe that is the scenario. Now maybe there is some compliance, maybe there are some guidelines from your information security officer that that company data cannot traverse over the internet. Okay, so now this is an interesting challenge that see we can upload database backups via NAT gateway. Okay, so we can do it, but the thing is that it will violate the company policies. The company policy states that any company data should not traverse over the public network or the internet. So then we can't do it via NAT gateway. So what is the other option? So the other option is VPC endpoint. Okay. So we can create a VPC endpoint for S3 service. And then once we create a VPC endpoint for S3 service, then we will be able to communicate with S3 service over a private network. And if I create a VPC endpoint for S3, then any communication that is happening between the EC2 instance and the S3 endpoint, that would not happen over the internet, and it will be over AWS network. And we'll see how we can do it. So it is not just for S3. You can create a VPC endpoint for any AWS service, be it EC2 instance, be it DynamoDB. For example, maybe you have a application, maybe I have a web application that I have deployed on a web server. That web server is running on a public subnet, but that web application reads and writes to DynamoDB. Okay, maybe that web application is not running on an RDBMS, but on DynamoDB. So your web application reads and writes information to a DynamoDB table. Okay, so now maybe the same requirement we have here, that the company doesn't allow any data over the internet. So how can this EC2 instance can communicate to DynamoDB privately? So the answer is VPC endpoint. So normally, if we would not create a VPC endpoint, then the web application running on that EC2 instance would have to traverse over the internet to basically to connect to the API endpoint of DynamoDB. So in both these cases, one is that it's a security risk, and probably it may have some latency issues because it is going via the internet, and internet is unpredictable, unreliable. So even in that case also, in this case also, you can create a VPC endpoint for DynamoDB. Once you create a VPC endpoint for DynamoDB, your EC2 instance uh, will be able to, or basically the web application running on that EC2 instance would be able to connect to DynamoDB privately over AWS network. Okay, so here let's again come to this formal definition. A VPC endpoint enables you to privately connect your VPC to supported AWS services without requiring an internet gateway, NAT device, or egress only internet gateway. Instances in your VPC does not require public IP addresses to communicate with resources in the service. Okay, traffic between your VPC and other service does not leave the Amazon network. Okay, so basically using VPC endpoints, we can connect our VPC to supported AWS services. So as of now, uh, this VPC endpoint is not available for all the AWS services, but pretty much for the common services that everybody use. For all those AWS services, I believe that there is a VPC endpoint, but there are few AWS services for which VPC endpoints are not available. That is why they are writing it this way, that a VPC endpoint enables you to privately connect your VPC to supported AWS services without requiring an internet gateway, NAT device, or egress only gateway. We don't need any of it. So the communication would be entirely private. Your VPC will be able to connect to AWS services over AWS network, and the communication doesn't have to traverse over the internet. Okay, so let's see how we can do it. So as of now, I am in DB server. This DB server does not have internet connectivity at all, and that is why this command is not working. We are not able to connect to S3 service. So let's see how we can fix it using VPC endpoint. Okay, so
So
one
Shubham,
thing I
yeah,
yes.
sorry. Yeah, Shubham. So in this case, like we used to have on-prem and AWS connectivity using the internet gateway. So in this case, we'll be using VPC endpoint for current scenario.
Sorry, I didn't get the
Yeah,
question, Salman. Can you repeat?
like on-prem and the AWS, we used to have the internet gateway in between for the
Yeah, correct.
yeah.
Yes.
So in this case, VPC would override it, is it? Like how it would be?
See, see, currently, what is happening is, okay. See, basically, if I get out of it, currently I am on my local machine, okay, and then
Right.
I'm connecting to which server? I'm connecting to the server which is in public subnet,
Public, yeah.
right?
Public subnet, yeah.
So whatever communication is happening between my laptop and this EC2 instance, basically this one, which is in public subnet, that is over the internet, and that is happening because we have internet gateway in place, okay, between
Correct.
these two. So my client computer and this EC2 instance, which is in public subnet, right? And since this particular server, since this is in public subnet with a route to the internet gateway, I can do anything I feel like. Even I can execute any AWS CLI commands because it is working because this EC2 instance has access to the internet. And
Internet
how
gateway.
it has access to the internet? It has access via the internet gateway, right?
Correct.
So now, if from this machine, if I try to connect to this DB server, okay, I will copy this IP address and then let's connect to this one. H -I. This is the private key, and then this is the private IP address of the DB server, which
DB
is in
server.
private subnet, right?
Private subnet.
So now I'm already inside this machine, right? And this machine does not have internet access, doesn't
Right.
have at all. Right? So now there is an interesting question that how do we allow this machine to connect to AWS S3 service? Because the requirement is because the company policy says that we cannot the company data cannot traverse via the
Internet
internet,
gateway.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I would allow this machine to send to upload data to S3 via NAT gateway, then it will violate the company policy, right?
No, true.
Because even the NAT gateway basically lets you connect to the internet via the internet gateway, right? So NAT gateway itself is present in a public subnet. We simply directing the traffic to NAT gateway. NAT gateway on behalf of this server is making the same calls to the remote server or to the S3 endpoint, and then basically uploading the data or downloading the data and then sending it back to this private server. So essentially, this is also happening via the internet, right? So maybe this is we have a policy which doesn't allow that. So now what is the solution of it? So the solution is that we create a VPC endpoint. Okay, VPC endpoint. Let's let you connect resources running in a VPC privately to supported AWS services, right? So pretty much for all the services you can create VPC endpoints, but there are some services for which VPC endpoints are not available. So VPC endpoints are available for S3 service, for EC2, for DynamoDB, and a whole lot of other services. In this case, we will try to create one VPC endpoint for S3 service, and then we will see how using that VPC endpoint we will be able to connect to S3 without having a internet connection, and whatever data we will upload from this private server to S3, that will happen over Amazon network. It will not leave the Amazon network. It will not happen over the internet, and so that is why it is secure, and it basically meets our company requirements. So does it answer your question, Salman?
Yeah. Yeah. Shubham, yeah.
Okay, so let's do it. So how we can do it is, before I do it, let's do one thing to simplify this. What I'm going to do is AWS configure, right? And using this, what we do is we basically store credentials here. We don't have to do that because we have an IAM role attached. So I'm not putting an access key ID here. I'm not also putting any secret access key. I'm just putting a default region name so that I do not have to pass this region name with every command. Okay. And the table name and the output format, let's put it in JSON. Okay. So I'm just doing it so that I don't have to specify this thing manually. Otherwise, if I do not specify it here in the configuration, then I have to explicitly write every time I execute any CLI command, I have to specify the region name also. Like this. Okay. So as of now, it's not working, right? So let's fix it. So what I'm going to do now is I will navigate to VPC section. Okay. And then here we will scroll down and we'll go to endpoints. Okay. So I will say create endpoint. You do not have any endpoints in this region, which is true. We haven't created any endpoint yet. So I will go ahead and create it. Then here it is asking me select a service name. Okay, for which service you want to create a endpoint. So you can see for pretty much for a different for a lot of AWS services, we can create endpoints like for notebooks, studio and whatnot. So let's search for S3. Okay. So here we can see that S3 is there. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate a VPC endpoint of type gateway. Okay. There is a easy video that you can follow. It's just a 5 minutes video. It's quite simple. It is from Amazon Web Services itself. Just give it a try. But essentially, it doesn't matter what type of VPC endpoint you're creating, whether interface or gateway type of endpoint. The concept remains the same and both serve the same purpose. Okay. So I'm demonstrating you just the gateway interface. You can try it yourself. Okay. So let's create a VPC endpoint of type gateway. Okay. So I have selected S3. So I'm saying that I want to create a VPC endpoint for service S3. So I've selected this here. And then what then you have to select the VPC for which you're creating this endpoint. Okay. So I'm creating this endpoint for this dev and VPC. Okay. And then basically here it is saying, do you want to configure the route tables? Yes, I want to configure the route tables. So when you say configure route tables, a rule with the destination this. Okay. And the target with this endpoint will be added to the route tables you select below. Okay. So in our case, the requirement is that the DB server should be able to upload database backups privately to S3 bucket. Okay. So our DB server uh, resides in a private subnet, and and that private subnet is associated with main route table, right? So here we can see this is the route table. It is the main route table, right? And this main route table is associated with two subnets. What are these two subnets? These are the private subnets. Okay. So what I'm essentially saying is create an endpoint for service S3 and and create an endpoint for this VPC, right? And then adjust the route tables accordingly. I want to allow EC2 instances running in the private subnet to be able to connect to S3 via VPC endpoint. So that is why I am basically letting this configure my route table. So I have selected this particular route table, which is associated with the private subnets, right? So I'm saying, please configure the route table on our behalf, and we'll see once the configuration is done, we'll see how it looks like. Okay. So, and then here is the access policy. You can customize it. Here, essentially what this policy allows any IAM user to this basically, if you are inside this EC2 instance, okay, if you are inside any EC2 instance which is in a private subnet, then no matter which IAM user you are using, you will be able to access S3 privately. But if you have a requirement that even from that DB server, only a specific IAM user should be allowed to upload maybe database backups, then you can customize this policy. But if you don't have any such requirement, just leave the default policy. But this policy essentially lets you customize it. For example, maybe for some reason you want to restrict so that only a specific IAM user should be able to upload database backups from the EC2 instances which are running in private subnets. But in our case, that is not the case. So we leave the default policy and we'll say go ahead and create an endpoint. So the endpoint is created. OK, the status is available. So now let's go ahead and see how the route tables have been adjusted now. So if I go to route tables here and let's reload it. So let's identify the main route table or the route table which is associated with the private subnets. OK, so here let's sort it based on the VPC. And here I can see. So these are the two route tables. These are the two route tables associated with this VPC, dev and VPC, right? One route table is the public route table. The other route table is for private subnets. This is the main route table, right? So let's go and see how the route looks like now. So if I go to routes, then here you can see one route here. OK, so this is the route which VPC endpoint has created, and what it is saying is, so essentially you can see basically anything which is uh, so essentially what it is saying is, if I go to, let's go back here and so this is the uh, OK, so here what is done here is basically there is one route that got added when we created the VPC endpoint, and there was an option where we can specify that configure the route tables. So that is why the route table got configured automatically, and we have this destination. This destination is essentially a representation of this destination is essentially a representation of S3 service in Asia Pacific Mumbai, right? So basically it is saying that if the traffic is destined for S3 service in Asia Pacific Mumbai, then send it to this VPC endpoint. OK, so now this route table has been adjusted. So let's see if we are able to connect to S3 service now from that DB server. That DB server does not have any kind of internet connectivity. So if we are able to connect to S3 service, then we know that this VPC endpoint is working, right? So let's try it again. So I am still in that DB server, and let's try AWS S3 LS. So now I can see that I'm getting the result of this CLI command. And the other important thing that you have to note with VPC endpoints is that we have created this VPC endpoint for Asia Pacific Mumbai. So I will only be able to access the S3 buckets in Asia Pacific Mumbai. OK, if I try to access a bucket which is in maybe in some other region, not in Asia Pacific Mumbai, then I will not be able to connect to that bucket. So for example, see, listing the bucket is not region specific. So that is why we are able to get the list of all the buckets. OK, so now if I go back here, let's see what buckets we have and in which regions we have those buckets.
So Shubham, in this case, like if there is a reboot, so there will be a change in the public IP.
Anyways, there is no public IP, right? So this DB server does not have any public IP at all.
Yeah, it is
So
in
we don't
private.
have to worry about. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So then we don't have to worry, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So Shubham, how much does AWS charge for this VPC endpoint? Because
Actually, I don't remember, but it's pretty costly. We can see that how much it basically charges you. But I remember it charges you per hour, I believe. Uh, Actually, the thing is that there are so many AWS services and how they are charged exactly. It's very hard to remember, but I believe there are. I mean, there is a pricing page for each AWS service, and they are not going to ask you any questions with respect to pricing. OK, but we can search here AWS VPC endpoint pricing. So let's see.
So Shubham, like they might have a package for any corporate clients, like usually in or like for example for Oracle it has like platinum based customers, something like that.
Yeah, they have that, of course. So they have something like volume-based pricing. Okay. So for example, you can see here is that for first 1 petabytes of data, they will charge you this much per GB. Okay. For next 4 petabytes, they have lowered the per GB pricing. Okay. So this is called as volume pricing. And then they also have, depending upon the kind of support plan that you have selected with AWS, they might have given you some additional some kind of a different pricing. For example, if we see AWS support plans, so there are 4 support plans essentially. So if I go here, compare support plans. So here we can see there are essentially 3 support plans: developer, business, and enterprise. There is another support plan, basic, which basically everybody has access to, right? So anyone who does not have a paid plan will have a basic plan in which you can only raise an incident with respect to billing. So, and then you have 3 paid plans: developer, business, and enterprise. So they may have some additional pricing maybe for an enterprise customer and things like that. Okay.
Good.
Anyways, you don't have to worry about with respect to pricing. There will be no questions with respect to pricing, that how much VPC endpoints are charged per hour. So nothing like that. Okay. So if any pricing that you want to see, just simply say AWS and then the service name and then write pricing. There will be a pricing page. It will list down how they charge you for that specific service.
Good.
Okay, so here we can see that we have these many buckets, but not all of the buckets are in Asia Pacific Mumbai, right? So if we see that this bucket, shubhamjoshi.xyz, this is in Asia Pacific Mumbai. So let's try to list the content of this bucket. So if I do AWS S3 ls S3 colon slash slash shubhamjoshi.xyz, if I do it, I'll be able to list the content of this bucket because this bucket is in Asia Pacific Mumbai. So I can see I have an images folder and I have an index.html file. If I try to access some other bucket which is not in Asia Pacific Mumbai, for example, this SE Labs Corp data bucket, if I try to list down the content of this bucket, then it is not going to work. Okay, let's do it. AWS S3 ls AWS S3 ls, then the bucket name. So this is the bucket name, right? So if I try to do it, it's not going to work out. Then you may say that, okay, this is not in Asia Pacific Mumbai, and in our configuration we have specified AP South 1. So maybe that is why it is not working. But that is not the case. Even if I override that configuration and I explicitly specify the region code for this bucket, the region code is what? US East 2. So if I do US East 2, then also it's not going to work out because that VPC endpoint is for Asia Pacific Mumbai. So we will only be able to access buckets in that specific region. So this is what VPC endpoints are, and this is not restricted to S3 only. You can pretty much create a VPC endpoint for any service like even EC2. For example, maybe there is some requirement where you want to, start and stop EC2 instances via cron job. Okay, and maybe that server on which you have scheduled that cron job, maybe that server has no internet access. Then how will you start and stop the EC2 instances? The answer is simple, that either that server, if it doesn't have internet connectivity, be it through internet gateway or through NAT gateway, if it does not have any internet connectivity and you still want to maybe start and stop EC2 instances via cron job, how would you do it? You will simply create a VPC endpoint for EC2 service and then accordingly adjust the route table, right? And then you will be able to start and stop EC2 instances privately without having an internet connectivity. So this is what VPC endpoints are. So any question on what VPC endpoints are? So this is how it looks like.
No,
You can see. Yeah, okay. So let's go ahead and discuss this security token service now. So what is security token service? So Amazon Security Token Service is a web service that enables you to request temporary limited privilege credentials for IAM users or for users that you authenticate, essentially federated users, right? So maybe some users which does not exist in IAM, maybe they exist in some kind of an identity provider, right? But you are federating it. Essentially, you are basically delegating the job of authentication to some identity provider. Once the authentication is done, if you want to generate temporary security credentials for a user which does not even exist in IAM, maybe, right? So maybe that user exists somewhere else. That could be any kind of identity provider. So we can maybe, for example, uh, maybe there is some user which exists in an LDAP server or in an Active Directory server, or there could be some other web identity providers also. So if we want to generate temporary security credentials for such users or for federated users, you can say, so we can generate temporary security credentials for those users as well using security token service. So we'll see that. Okay. So there are different API calls that we can make to security token service to get temporary security credentials. Okay. So the first API call which we can make to security token service to get temporary credentials is this STS assume role API call. Okay, so STS assume role API call returns a set of temporary security credentials that you can use to access AWS resources that you might not normally have access to. These temporary credentials consist of an access key ID, a secret access key, and a security token. Okay, so let's see how it looks like. Okay, so maybe assume we have maybe our company is using different AWS accounts for each environment. Okay, so a lot of companies do it. For example, so they may have different AWS accounts. So one AWS account is for just for development or sandbox. They might have a different AWS account for production resources. Okay, so because of lot of you can maybe better administrate this way, and you can put better security controls this way, that uh, maybe lot of IT consultants might have access to sandbox AWS account or to non-prod AWS account, but very few set of people might have access to production AWS account. So maybe assume that is the case, that a company is using two accounts, right? So one AWS account is for development, and one AWS account is for production resources, and very limited people have access to production AWS account. Okay, so we have this user called Alice. Okay, so we have an Alice. This is an IAM user, and this user exists in development account. Okay, but Alice user account does not exist in production account. Okay, now maybe once in a while there might be a requirement where she needs temporary access to production account. Okay, so Alice does not have a user account in production account, but it may happen that in specific cases she might need temporary access to this production account. Then what can we do is, how can we securely give temporary access to this Alice user? How can we do it? Through security token service we can easily do it. What we will do is, we'll create an IAM role in production account. Okay, and we will say that, okay, who can assume this role? We will specify that we can either specify that any IAM user from this account can assume this role, or we can also say that we can also restrict it to a certain IAM user. So what we can do is, we can create, for example, maybe Alice needs uh, permission or access to S3 buckets for whatever reason. Maybe once in a while she needs access to S3 bucket only. So she should have access to basically access S3 buckets. But other than that, she should have no access, and that too, she should not have permanent access to production account. So what in this case, how can we achieve this? What we can do is, we can create an IAM role in production account. In that IAM role, we will attach an IAM policy. That IAM policy would grant whosoever is assuming that role, that person would have, depending upon the IAM policy attached, that person would have those kind of permissions. So maybe assuming what I will do is in production account, I will create an IAM role and I will attach an IAM policy. For example, I will attach Amazon S3 full access IAM policy with that IAM role. Okay. And then I will say that either I can say that any IAM user from this development account can assume this role. And then basically any IAM user from development account can assume that role, because that's how it is set up. Or I can also restrict it if that is the case. Maybe it's the Alice only that should have access and no other user from dev account. In that case also we can do it. We can easily create again an IAM role. In that IAM role we will specify that who we are trusting this role with. We'll specify that only Alice user from dev account can assume this role. And then once this role is set up in production account, then Alice, what she can do is she can log into her development account and she will make an STS assume role API call. And as long as this Alice user has permissions to basically, as long as Alice user has permission to call STS assume role API call, she will be able to assume that role. And when she will make this API call, STS assume role API call, in response to this API call, security token service will return a set of temporary credentials to Alice, and using those set of temporary credentials, she can access production account. And 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 basically, why are we saying this temporary security credentials? Because this expires every hour. Okay, so these are temporary security credentials. After 1 hour, those security credentials will become invalid. And if she wants to continue access, if she wants to still, if she wants to access this production account even after 1 hour, she can again make that API call. She can make a STS assume role API call, and then again security token service would return a set of temporary credentials, and that temporary credentials Alice user can use to access resources in production account. Okay, so a temporary credentials has access key ID, secret access key, and a session token. Okay, so this is how it is. Or maybe, okay, let's discuss some other scenario. Maybe you have an AWS account, okay, and there is a maybe now there is an audit that needs to happen, and there is could be some company that specializes in security audit. So maybe you have contracted with that specific organization, and now that company is auditing your AWS account. Okay, so now that auditor would need access to your AWS account so that he can audit the AWS account. So how can we give access to such a person? Okay, that person does not belong to our organization, right? So his ID will not be there in our any maybe his ID will not be there in Active Directory or LDAP server. We can't create an IAM user also in IAM. We can create it, but it's not a good practice because that person does not belong to our company. So why should we create his account in our AWS account? So maybe he needs temporary access while he's doing the auditing. Once that is done, then maybe he doesn't need access. So for such a scenario also, we can create an IAM role, okay, for that person. Maybe those company is also using an AWS account. So we can ask him, okay, what is your AWS account that you are using? And then we can create an IAM role, and we will say that we are trusting this AWS account. So this AWS account can assume this role, and using this role, they will have access to S3 bucket and CloudTrail maybe, right? So let's try to do it, and then it will make more sense. Okay. So I'm currently in this AWS account, the one we use daily, right? So what I will do is I will go to IAM section, and I have my own personal account, so I will log into this account also. So this is my personal account and I'm logging inside this account in incognito mode. So let's do it. Um, I can put my AWS account ID here, or I can put the account alias. So I remember what alias I created. So SE Labs Corp. Okay. So I'm trying to log into my AWS account. Let's assume that this account belongs to a, a security auditor, and the company, this company to whom this account belongs, this company wants to audit our AWS account. Okay, so let's see how we can give access to this external auditor. Okay, maybe this is a fictitious company named SE Labs Corp. This SE Labs Corp specializes in AWS auditing. Okay, so maybe there is a user called called external auditor, right? And now we want to give external auditor, which belongs to this account. We want to give this user access to our AWS account. Okay, so let me try to log in here. Okay, so I am inside this AWS account. This AWS ID, right? Go to, I will go to where is that? Okay, roles. Okay, so I will create a role here. So here it is asking me select type of trusted entity. Okay, so normally so far what we have done is we have created IAM roles for AWS services, right? So we have created an IAM role for EC2 instances. We have created an IAM role for Lambda, right? So now we can say that, we want to trust this role and basically select type of trusted entity. So I will say another AWS account, right? So if I click here, another AWS account belonging to you or third party. So that other AWS account can belong to your own company, or it can belong to any third party company also. In our case, it is a third party company, right? So here I can create a here I can specify this account ID. Okay, so what I will do is I will check what is the account ID. So I'll copy this account ID and then I'll paste it here, and then so require external ID. This is a good option in case, for example, if you are creating this role for a third party. Okay, so if we say require external ID, then whenever he's making this AWS STS assume role API call, he has to specify this external ID also as part of that API call. Okay, so normally if you are creating this role for an AWS account that you own, maybe a company is using several AWS accounts for maybe for different environments. If the other AWS account belongs to you only, then probably no need of basically checking this external ID. But it's a good idea if somebody, if somebody who doesn't belong to your organization, if he would be assuming this role, then as a good practice, we can enable this require external ID, and we can specify the external ID here. It would be kind of a password, right? So whenever that person would make an API call, whenever that person would make STS assume role API call, in in addition to the role ARN, he would also have to specify this external ID, and then only it will be successful. If he, puts a wrong external ID, then that assume role API call would give a basically something like 403 forbidden, some kind of that kind of a response. Okay, in our case that is not required. So basically I'm creating this IAM role for this account ID. So essentially IAM users in this account ID can assume this role. Okay, so here I will say next permission. So now I can attach the IAM policy here. So maybe we can attach two IAM policies. Maybe this security auditor would require access to S3 buckets and CloudTrail. Okay, so let's search for IAM policies. S3 full access. So this is one IAM policy, and the other is CloudTrail full access. Let's see. Okay, CloudTrail full access. So I have created an IAM role and I have specified that so and so account can assume this role. And then I have attached two policies here. One IAM policy allows access to S3. The other IAM policy allows access to CloudTrail. Okay. Now I can say next add tags review, and I can give this role a name. I will say role for security auditor. Let's say role for security auditor. And I can say create role. So the role has been created in our account, right? Now we can give this information to that external auditor. So normally what he would need is he would need your AWS account ID, and he would need your role name. So we can give this to him. Okay. And if we have enabled require external ID, we can set some specific password, and then we can give that password also, that this is the role name, this is the account ID, and this is the external ID. Whenever you want to access our AWS account, just make a STS assume role API call and specify the role name, specify the external ID, and basically specify the account ID. And then so let's try to find out the role that we just created. So role for security auditor. This is the role that we just created, right? Here we can see who is the trusted entity. This is the trusted entity, right? So basically account so and so is a trusted entity, and basically any IAM user from this account can assume this role, right? So let's do it. Let's see how we can assume this role. So I am in this AWS account. This AWS account belongs to SE Labs Corp, which specializes in security audit. So that external auditor, what he has to do is he has to log into his AWS account, and then he can say switch roles. Okay. If he expands this switch roles, so he can say switch role, and then he can specify the account ID. Okay. So the account ID is what? This account ID, right? This account ID can specify here. Then he has to specify the role name, right? So whenever we have created this IAM role, any such role, we will give this information to that external auditor. That boss, this is our account ID. This is the role that we have created for you. Go ahead and basically access our AWS account using this role, right? So I have already copied the AWS account ID. I have pasted it here, and then I will paste the role name also. You can give a display name if you feel like. I don't want to put a custom display name. Any color you want to put, you can put any color here. So this is fine. So I will say switch role.
So Shubham,
So now
this
yes, Niyati.
STS assume role is like it is time based, like or like we need to externally remove that once the work is done.
No, it automatically expires. Okay, so you have that option to basically specify for how long that credentials will be valid, right? So default is 1 hour. I will show you where that setting resides. Okay. And so this switch role that we used, switch role is nothing but when we say switch role, we are behind the scenes making a STS assume role API call. Okay. So when we said switch role and we specified the account ID and the role name, and we said switch role. So behind the scenes, this console is making an API call to STS. And what is that API call? That API call is assume role API call, right? So and then that assume role API call would have responded with temporary set of credentials, and using this temporary set of credentials, I am logged inside I'm logged inside this AWS account. This AWS account belongs to Rajesh. Okay. So now we can see who is logged in. So currently active as this role and account is this, right? So this account belongs to Rajesh, right? So the external auditor has successfully logged in by assuming this role, right? And now he is inside this role. Now he is inside this account where he can perform the auditing, right? So let's see if he can access S3 buckets. So he will go to, let's go to S3. So here we can see that this external auditor is able to list the buckets, right? And then he can also, go inside these buckets and see what the content is. So normally you would restrict it to specific CloudTrail bucket, right? Not to all buckets, but that is, I mean, it's just a demo class. So he can basically see that this is the bucket, right? He can see the content. He can even download it. So whatever he wants to feel, whatever he wants to do, right? So in addition to S3, we have also given him CloudTrail access. So he should be able to see the event history, right? And other than that, if he tries to access anything else like EC2, he would get, permission denied because the IAM policy is attached does not allow EC2 operations, right? It only allows CloudTrail and S3. Maybe it is now, it is just vaguely clear because we are not seeing that those credentials and it expires at what time. But I will try to, I will try to show you at CLI level also. So there you can see clearly those temporary set of credentials, and you will also see the expiration time. Okay. So here you can go to maybe event history also. So it is currently loading. So he can see this event, and then he may ask certain questions that, boss, I see that so and so EC2 instance has been terminated. So where are the required approvals and whatnot, right? So now let's try to navigate something which he does not have access. So if he tries to access something else other than S3 and CloudTrail, he's going to get permission denied. Okay. So while this is happening, let me delete that VPC endpoint because that is charging us money. So we'll go to VPC. So where is that? This is endpoints. Okay, let's delete it. So I will say delete endpoint. Yes, delete it. Okay. So now he can see that if we go here, API error, basically he is getting this API error because he does not have access to EC2, right? So now once his auditing is done, he can go back to his own account. So we can say back to external auditor, and then he'll be back to his role, to his own account. Okay. So once it is done. So this switch role behind the scenes is making this STS assume role API call. Okay. And that's how, and in response to this STS assume role API call, STS would have responded a set of temporary credentials, and using these temporary credentials, he is accessing S3 and CloudTrail. Okay. So if I try to, let me show you at CLI level, then you can see those temporary credentials also. Okay. So AWS configure, here the access key ID that you are seeing here, these access key ID belongs to SE Labs Corp AWS account, right? These access key ID and secret access key does not belong to Rajesh account. These access key ID and secret access key belongs to SE Labs Corp account. Okay. So I've already configured it. So what we can do is AWS STS. Okay. And then assume I don't remember the exact syntax. Let's see. So okay. So basically STS, AWS STS, assume role. Then it says that the following arguments are required. You have to specify the role ARN and the role session name. Okay. So let's do it. AWS STS, assume role. Then I will say hyphen hyphen role ARN. So I already told you, right? Every AWS resource that we create, that resource would have would have a unique ARN. ARN is nothing but Amazon resource name. So we need to put the role ARN of that IAM role. So let's see what is the ARN of that IAM role. So what I can do is I will go to IAM, and then I will go to role roles, and then we'll search for that specific role, and then we'll be able to see the role ARN. So role for security auditor. If I click here,
Hello.